Hey, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Vanda, founder of the Period Makeover Solution and Fertility Maximizer. I was scrolling on Instagram a couple days ago and I came across this reel and I read it and I thought this goes perfectly along with what I want to talk about on the podcast this week. So this reel popped up and the text that you can just see on the reel without reading the caption or anything was just like the hook, the title, for lack of a better word, of what it says. It says, as an OBGYN, this is the visit I wish every woman booked before trying to get pregnant. It's called a preconception visit. And then down in the caption, she's like sharing why she thinks that. And I had been wanting to record this episode for a while where I revisited a topic that I have a blog post about, and I think I have a podcast episode on it from way back when, but it's where I talk about why fertility and worrying about your fertility is important, even if you're not currently trying to get pregnant. And honestly, it's important for people that even like never want to get pregnant because it comes back to period health and our menstrual cycle being such an important part of our overall health as a woman. But if you're listening to this podcast, I am going to assume that at some point in your life, you want to get pregnant. If that's not you, you're probably in the wrong place and you can probably not listen every week. But anyway, the reason that I wanted to talk about this was so that I could point out some of the important things that you can work on before you enter the actual phase of actively trying to get pregnant that might collapse the time frame that it takes you to get pregnant. I have women that sometimes come to me. They learn about my Fertility Maximizer program and they ask me the question of like, well, I'm not really ready to start trying right now. Is this program still a good fit for me? Can I still participate in the program? Can I still sign up? Those type of questions. And of course, I have two programs. I have the Period Makeover Solution and I have Fertility Maximizer. There's a lot of crossover there with some differences. But both of those programs are helping to optimize your hormone health, which is essentially what we're doing and what we want to do when we are knowing in our minds that we are preparing for a future time period of trying to get pregnant. And it really doesn't matter how far in advance we are starting to plan for that and starting to take action on that. Honestly, the earlier the better. Because you guys have heard me share multiple times, it takes at least 90 days for eggs to develop and mature. And like the things that we are doing today are going to impact our egg health 90 days from now. And to kind of tie this back to some of our recent conversations about the male factor of this fertility picture, it's also the sooner the better for them as well, because it's not quite as long as 90 days. It's more like 75 to 80-ish days. But I mean, what's the difference of a few days there? That it also takes time for that healthy sperm to develop and mature. And so that's why it's important to start thinking ahead about this and taking action sooner rather than later. So I'm not going to go over everything or like every reason why this is important. This is just some of the most common things or the most important things that I feel like you can tackle and address in that time period where you know you're going to want to get pregnant someday. You're not ready to start trying now, but you want to make sure that when you're ready and that your body is ready and that your hormones are ready and that this can be as easy of a process as it can be. You don't want to think, well, this time next year, I'm going to start trying, do nothing different right now, get to that point next year. Maybe at that time you go off your birth control, or maybe you're not even on birth control, but you don't really think or know that anything is wrong up until you get to that point. And then, even though you're ready to get pregnant right then, you've got to spend 6 months or more kind of doing some of this foundational or repair work that you could have been doing ahead of time. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so let's get into it. First and foremost, mineral deficiencies. This is something that we could easily uncover early on and correct and get ahead of. I do that with my clients through HTMA testing. It is a fertility nutrition assessment. I love this test. I did a whole podcast episode on it. It was episode 100. So you can click back and listen to that if you're like, I have no idea what she's talking about. But those mineral deficiencies are very important because when you're pregnant, you are literally creating life. That little baby needs a lot from you, and you've got to have it to give. And the way that, pregnancy and our body prioritizing things, once you become pregnant, your body's going to prioritize that baby. So if, for example, the baby needs a lot of potassium and say you don't have much potassium in your stores. Maybe that's something that before you even get pregnant, you're deficient in or you're close to being deficient in. Then you get pregnant. All that potassium's got to go to the baby and to the energy that you're using to create the baby and carry the baby and all the things. And then suddenly you're really depleted and you're the one that's feeling like crap. Your baby might be getting what it needs, but you feel terrible. We see things like that happen all the time, and it's avoidable if you intervene early enough and be ahead of that time of trying to get pregnant. You have worked to correct mineral deficiencies once you know that they exist. So that's one thing. Second thing is we need to have a conversation with someone like myself that is a fertility nurse that specializes in hormones and trying to conceive, or with your provider, if you choose to go see your OBGYN, are there any chronic health conditions that you have, whether they be physical or mental, that somehow are going to impact your journey to try to conceive? That might be that you are on medications that you need to not be on once you're pregnant. We need to get a plan in place for that. Maybe you need to go ahead and transition to safer medications to take while you're pregnant. It might be that you're diabetic and you haven't even really, you don't know yet what that management of that condition is going to look like while you're pregnant, what's going to change, what things, like, is there just things you need to be more cognizant of or more strict with? Maybe it's that you suffer with migraines. And again, maybe you take a medication for that. You need to know, is that safe for me to take while I'm pregnant if I get a migraine, or is it not? For the most part, women that are still young enough that they're actively trying to get pregnant, thankfully, the majority of us are pretty healthy, but there are definitely things, chronic conditions, autoimmune conditions, thyroid conditions, things that do happen that young people get diagnosed with and have to be taken into consideration in this time of like, how is this going to impact my fertility and also my pregnancy? And you could even go as far as to say, how is this going to affect me when I'm recovering postpartum? And can I plan ahead for that? Can I get ahead of that in some way? You want to look at your current nutritional habits. Are you fueling yourself enough? Are you skipping meals? Are you someone that does intermittent fasting and that's been like a habit of yours for several years now that's going to be kind of hard to break that habit? Are you someone that eats a lot of junk food and you don't get a lot of good, like, whole foods in your diet? That's something we need to try to switch now. We need to start incorporating more things, especially ahead of a first trimester, because a lot of women feel so poorly with nausea and fatigue and stuff during that first trimester. It ain't the time to try to like eat your best. There are times during your first trimester that you're literally just trying to survive and get by. And, as I alluded to earlier, some of these things, this lack of prep can lead to that and lead to you feeling worse in that first trimester, specifically with the mineral deficiencies. Um, but it also can just happen even if you're really healthy beforehand. Sometimes it just happens and it's just, it's one of those things of being pregnant. But we want to make sure that ahead of trying to conceive, your nutrition and your diet is pretty locked in so that you're getting enough nutrients and you have enough nutrient reserves for the baby as well. You want to make sure that you really have a good grip on your cycle, how to track your cycle, what's important to track. What is cervical mucus? What am I looking for? How do I know if I ovulate? Do you even know how to try to conceive? Might want to plug little ears. Do you know when to have sex? Do you know how often? to have sex and on what days and how to space that out and how to do it. Like, I don't know. That piece, like that part of the education, nobody is really teaching you that at some standard point in life. It's like with certain things, we're taught them at a certain age. Like you're 16-ish, you learn how to drive. You're 18, you graduate high school, you start to get to vote, you go off to college. At that point, you're having to learn life skills like how to do your laundry, how to cook for yourself, how to balance a checkbook and pay your bills. Well, there is no set age where someone sits you down. It's like, this is how you try to get pregnant. This is how to do it the right way until you're in the middle of it and you're like, oh, well, I just thought that I was going to like have sex and get pregnant. And I didn't know that I needed to like know all of these things of how to do it. I just thought you did it and you got pregnant. There's actually a lot that goes into it. And, you know, some people don't have all of that knowledge and they get lucky. And that's great for them. But you don't want to go into it unprepared and spend months of your time just kind of spinning your wheels, wondering, well, why am I not getting pregnant? When it's because you've missed something really basic in the beginning that you easily could have like corrected and got ahead of right out of the gate. So those are the main things. That's really what I wanted to kind of point out, focus on. Yes, some of this stuff sounds like boring habits. It sounds a lot like we'll just try to be healthier. And that is at the core of a lot of it. Yes, it's manage your stress better, sleep more, eat better and more whole foods, and move more. But that foundational stuff, sometimes we brush it off as, well, that's the easy stuff. When in reality, if we were doing like a habit tracker and we were really stringently like holding ourselves accountable, or someone was holding you accountable, you would be lacking in those foundational areas more than you'd like to admit. And so it's worth spending some intentional time, at least 3 months. But again, the sooner the better, ahead of entering that season of trying to get pregnant, to do that accountability step for yourself, and or have someone do it for you if you can't hold yourself accountable. I know sometimes some of us struggle with that in certain areas, and that's totally fine. Have someone that helps hold you accountable and guides you in that way. Like maybe you're even someone that you're pretty young and you've like never had to try to be healthy before. You've just always been pretty active, you've been pretty healthy, and you've never had to like, you've never really been on diets, you've never had a set workout plan. Maybe you played sports and you just kind of like the sport was your activity. There's so much that changes when you like enter the season of adulthood where you're having to actually put effort and thought and intention into those things for the very first time. And you're like, well, nobody ever like taught me how to do this. What do I do? How do I do this? How do I actually make this a habit for myself in this new season of life? So don't forget about your period of preconception. It is very important. I am happy to support you in either one of my programs. If you're like, okay, yeah, that makes so much sense, and I don't know what I'm doing, so I would love to hire her to help tell me what to do. I would love to do that for you. As always in the show notes, there's like a link, where you can book a call with me. If you're like, I don't even need to get on a call with you, we don't need to meet on Zoom, just get in my Instagram DMs, send me a message, send me a voice note, and I'll be happy to guide you and tell you which of my programs would be good for you and when, timing wise, I think that you should do it and take advantage of it. Now, talking about offers, wanted to give you guys, as my podcast listeners, a heads up. You're going to be listening to this on the 10th, if I'm looking at my calendar correctly. No, the 9th. Earlier this week, I opened the doors to a brand new offer. I'm going to record a podcast episode about it for next week that'll come out on the 14th, but I want you to go ahead and know about it so that you can get signed up. This is called Fertility Kickstart Week, and I will link the page to sign up in the show notes. It's just $47. You get a week with me. I don't want to go into all the nitty-gritty details since I am going to record a whole episode about it for next week. But if you're like, that piques my interest, I've wanted to work with you, but the full program didn't really seem like the right fit, or maybe it was out of your budget, click the link in the show notes, visit the Fertility Kickstart week, head over to my Instagram page, listen to my stories. I'm going to be talking about it, sharing about it a lot, and get yourself signed up. It is starting, the Kickstart week itself is going to start on July 20th and run through the 24th. So enrollment for it ends at midnight on the 19th of July. So make sure that you get signed up before then. So that's all I've got for you guys today. I hope that you have a great rest of your day, a great rest of the week, and I'll talk to you next week.